go to Discord real quick. Okay. I am going to start the storytelling now. I'm not going to be reading, it's going to be someone else. So, yeah. They're linked in the description. Yeet. Now that we're good, we can start with short.
I'm 44 years old now, and I've had 2 incidences in my life where I'm absolutely confident I saw a large, hairy wolf or wolf-like creature. The first one was in the 1970s, and I was rather young, maybe 7 or 8 at the most. The creature was looking at me in my bed on a night that was quite stormy before I saw it. I remember how big and broad it was, and how it stood on 2 legs, just like a human would. The creature was looking at me in my bed. It was a dark night, but I could see this thing easily, as it departed from the storm that was still close enough to flash lightning that lit up everything outside. The thing had a wolf face, yellowish eyes, but not bright yellow, not fluorescent like that either. More of a subdued yellow. It had pointy ears that seemed to keep moving through the whole experience, like he was twitching them all the time for some reason. It never snarled, never growled or howled, but it just looked at me from the outside of the glass. I was in bed, trying to settle down and go back to sleep after the storm, which rattled me as a kid. For some reason, I felt like I had to look outside. I turned over and sat up. I wasn't 20 feet from this thing, and separated only by a wrought iron door with the glass inside of it. I became terrified to the point I started yelling like mad. My grandmother and little sister were asleep in bed, even closer to the door, but at the angle, they couldn't sit up and see what I saw. I was literally scared out of my wits. I started screaming, and quickly my grandmother woke up, turned on a lamp, and then came over to me. Of course, she asked what was wrong. I was staring at the thing, and could only point towards it. I couldn't speak a word. When I pointed, it started stepping back away from the door, as my grandmother looked to see what scared me. She never said she saw it, but I'm confident she did. Her voice changed, and she woke up immediately. My sister woke up and was scared at this time, but she stayed in bed. She was younger than me, and she began crying. I saw the thing turn and move away, not at a fast pace, just stepped away and faded into the dark. All this commotion woke up my grandfather, who was flipping on lights as he came into the back room to see what was going on. My grandmother saw him enter the room, and he turned on the main light. At this instant, she told him to get his gun and go outside, because something was out there, and it scared me badly. He did as she said, because her voice was in a panic, and he knew something wasn't right. He went into his room and got a gun. You could hear him going into his closet. Then he went outside, turning on all manners of lights as he went, inside and outdoors. He was outside for about 10 minutes, and we could easily see him the whole time. He came in and talked low and right into my grandmother's ear. I didn't hear what was said that night, and I was still a scared wreck for the rest of the night. My grandfather slept in the back room with the rest of us, rifle still at his side as he lay on a different bed by himself. He left many lights on in the house, and all of them on outside. I could never get him to tell me what he saw or found, but before my grandmother died in 2003, she told me that when he went outside that night, he found big, muddy footprints on the concrete, shaped like paw prints, but they were really big. My grandmother made me wait until I was in my 20s when she finally told me, and I remember what a chill it gave me, even being such an older person. She also told me she saw it for a few seconds when I pointed to the door. She said it scared her so bad, she never talked about it again, except with my grandpa. The year would have been 1977 to 1979, most likely. I know they didn't have a big dog at that time, and there weren't any dog tracks. The paw prints were far too large to be a dog. Whatever it was, it never came back. My grandparents lived in that house from 1960 to 1994, when my grandfather had a massive heart attack and died in the bathroom. We never talked about that night again, just the one time when I was in my 20s. Grandma couldn't sleep that night, and I was in the kitchen. That's when she told me. She told me she'd stay up many nights after that, unable to sleep and worrying about her grandchildren. When I was in my teens and early 20s, I stayed with them often, especially on the weekends. But I never slept in that bed that faced the door again. And my grandmother actually made my grandfather's construction crew put a heavy wood door over that wrought iron door, so no one or no thing could ever look into it again.
Sorry, I'm moving.
The second event was around 1988 or 1989. It was early one December morning, before the sun was up, and I was going deer hunting with two other guys. We were all in the same pickup truck, riding to the hunting location, about an hour away, and it was about 3:30 in the morning. We were going down a state highway that runs along I-40 here in East Arkansas, and probably going about 45 miles an hour or so. We were about to come to an area that turned, so the driver was about to start slowing down to make the big turn. We were talking amongst ourselves, no radio, when a big animal that looked like a werewolf darted out into a field in front of the truck. It was very close, and I thought we were going to hit it. But I clearly saw lots of teeth as the thing looked at us in the truck, just when it was crossing in front of us. It looked mad as hell. It was on 2 feet, striding like a man, but way too fast to be a man. Its fur was light gray, and kind of a cream color also, maybe even a buff white, but it still looked dirty too. We all saw the thing for about 3 or 4 seconds, and everyone yelled out a few cuss words, basically meaning, "What the hell was that?" Only in real strong language. The driver slammed on the brakes, and all 3 of us jumped out to see or shoot this thing. We were loaded up with rifles since we were going hunting, so we weren't that afraid. We saw where it went in a field, but it was a few feet away. After that, we couldn't even see it anymore. But you could hear it, kind of huffing or puffing, as it went further and further away. We heard it for maybe 5 seconds, but only after we jumped out of the truck. After that, it was completely quiet. I wanted to fire a few shots to see if I hit anything, or scared it into making any noise. But one of the other guys reminded me quickly that the interstate was close, and a rifle bullet could reach a car there easily. The truck was still running, and the doors were wide open. We all felt okay with the firepower we had, but still, we quickly got back into the truck, shut the doors, and took off. After that, we never saw it again, but we talk about it to this day about what it was.
Back in 2008, I was on a hunting trip with my brother up near the Canadian Michigan border. We had rented a cabin for a week, and we were looking forward to a nice quiet week until this monster spoiled it all. One night, after a day of being in the woods, we were tired and didn't feel like cooking up a meal, so I decided to jump in my truck and drive into town to get some pop and some grub, while my brother stayed back to wash up. So, I drove into the town by myself, and was away about 45 minutes, probably not even a solid hour. I talked with the gal at the counter for a few, but I wanted to get back to feed my brother, since he gets grouchy when he doesn't have food, and I didn't want him to be hacking on me. By the time I headed back, it was getting dark, and by the time I reached the cabin, the sun had already gone down all the way. I hit the road leading to the cabin and could see the silhouette of something big looking in one of the windows of the cabin. At first, I thought it was Everett, since it looked like it was standing on two legs. But this thing looked to be too tall. So, then I thought to myself, well, then it's a bear. I didn't want no bear coming around the cabin and causing trouble, so I decided to scare him off with my headlights. So I aimed my truck in his direction and flipped on my high beams. What I saw then wasn't a bear, it was a monster. When my lights hit it, it spun around and I saw the whole thing, and it was only standing on two legs. Now, you wanted my description of this thing, and I wish I had my camera handy, so I could have just took a picture and gave it to you. But I wasn't expecting to see any type of monster out there. He was a big guy, like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, but it wasn't any Sasquatch I was looking at. It looked more like a werewolf. He was more than 7 feet tall, based on how high his head was above the top of the window. He was brown, like a chocolate lab, but the coat was different. It was shaggy like a wolf and had lighter spots in the chest and legs. He had big muscles, like he went to the gym. His chest was really wide and his shoulders looked like Brock Lesnar, a real musclehead. He had arms that looked like they could kill you easily, and these long, fingered hands with big nails at the ends, and his neck was as thick as my waist almost. Even with all the power in his body, that ain't what scared the hell out of me. It was his face. He looked like he was madder than hell about something. Maybe because I interrupted him. Maybe that was just his attitude all day. Who knows? But those eyes, they will haunt me all my days. I believe in good and evil, and this thing was pure
Hello,
evil.
two people.
The light reflected off his eyes like a night
Also,
predator,
Inked,
and the rest of his
I
face
see
looked
your
like
comment.
a wolf's mouth.
Great,
Teeth,
you get to
nose,
watch me do
ears,
the art.
all just like a wolf. When this thing spun around to face me, it pivoted on his two back legs and turned just like a human would. First, he turned his waist to look at me, then pivoted to face me entirely. My body went numb and I started to shake. What in the hell was this thing? A werewolf? I don't know. The only thing I could think was that it was trying to get to my brother, and he didn't have any idea what this thing was. So, I started honking my horn and flashing my lights to get it to try to go away. Then that thing put its hands over its eyes to cover it like a person would. It gnashed its teeth at me, and then ran off into the woods, and it was still on two legs. I pulled right the hell up to the cabin as close as I could, grabbed my mag light and ran into the door. Left the truck running, and I was calling to my brother like a crazed man. Everett ran into the living room yelling at me, asking what the hell I was doing. I told him something was out there and we had to leave now. Luckily, my brother's a trusting man. 43 years of living with me, he should know when I'm serious, right? So we grabbed our rifles and mag lights and took off into the truck with haste. As we ran to the truck, we could both hear something big running in the woods next to the cabin, and the loudest growl I'd ever heard. That growl almost shook my insides. We tossed the guns to the truck and jumped in. Everett was shining his light to the forest, but he didn't see anything. Then we took off, and we got the hell out of there. On the way back into town, I told my brother what I had seen, and he just shook his head. I think he was letting it soak in. He looked at me and said, "Arn, I think you saw yourself a werewolf." I looked up at the sky, and it wasn't a full moon. I don't know what I saw that night. We went back during the day a few days later. After going to church, I might add, and praying a lot. We got our stuff and then talked to the gentleman that rented us the cabin and told him what I had seen. He swore that he had never heard of anything like that around that before, but I got the impression he was lying to us. That's why I never go into the woods alone or unarmed anymore.
After finishing a week-long welding job, I needed to have a day to myself to go hunting with my dog Hunterbone. He's a German Shepherd. And the bayou has always been a pleasure of mine. So, Saturday, at 4:45 a.m., on a foggy Louisiana morning, we got up and set out. 5:45 a.m., we were on an abandoned set of railroad tracks, going towards the old bayou bridge. At that point, Hunterbone gazed between the rails and was gazing forward into the foggy dew. I looked down at him. I don't see or hear any critters, my boy. What is it? Then I heard the rocks between the rails crunch a bit. This was up in front of us. And then this huge, dog-like critter appeared. It was walking forward and was about 30 yards ahead. It had glowing yellow eyes, and it stopped right in front of us. It had to be at least 7 feet tall. It had brownish-gray fur, a huge wolf-like head, almost like Hunter's, but it was wide, and it had this big set of white fangs. The ears were pointed like a wolf or coyote, and it had these weirdly long legs. They looked canine-like and very strong. Its arms were long, hairy, and built. I didn't see anything that could have been a tail, though. This was like Arnold Schwarzenegger with monkey power himself. Hunterbone wanted to attack this thing. He was growling and trying to break away from me. I had to restrain him to keep him from charging at it. I was so terrified, I instantly lowered the 12-gauge Remington shotgun. I had it filled with 6 rounds of buckshot, and fearfully let go 2 rounds, right above this werewolf thing's head. This thing howled, the most bone-tingling howl I've ever heard. It growled at us, and then ran back up the tracks over the bridge. I could hear the shrubbery snapping as he fled away into the foggy morning scene. Hunterbone and I ran lickety-split back to the pickup truck as fast as a deer could go. I turned right around and shot 2 more rounds in his direction, just for insurance. Then we hauled boogie quick back to the main road leading towards Crowley, Louisiana. As we pulled into the Exxon gas station, I told the state police officer what had just occurred. He said he too had this big, dog-like creature cross in front of his cruiser one day in the early morning hours, and could not explain the encounter either. He suggested I keep this encounter to myself, because people will think I'm daft and loony. Although this encounter only lasted 30 seconds or so, I will always have this experience forever embedded into my mind. I've been hunting in Louisiana for 35 years. The bayou is someplace I will always love, and I've never had a close-up encounter with anything this primordial, or scary, or awful, or fear-generating as this brief meeting with a dog man. I'd suggest you don't go alone into the swampy Louisiana bayou without being armed, and even so, watch yourself, as I never thought in this world a creature existed as this god-awful, spooky, diabolical thing does. Whiskey came to my mouth that day. That was the first time in 30 years. I was rattled, and did not like this thing at all. Well, sir, there you have it. That's my encounter.
You. I like that you like it, Inkleaf.
I can still remember the face and eyes, and those god-awful howls. See you later. The sports hunter from Crowley. After finishing a week-long welding job, I needed to have a day to myself to go hunting with my dog Hunterbone. He's a German Shepherd. And the bayou has always been a pleasure of mine. So, see you later. The Sports Hunter from Crowley.
Okay, we should be moving on to another story. Don't know what happened there. Give me a second, I'm gonna try and find something for us to listen to. Okay.
Hey, so you need a website. Let me show you how I made mine with Wix.
Website.
First, I went to Wix.
Okay. What the heck do we have?
My story starts on a warm summer night in 2003, about a month before my 12th birthday. I just rented Dog Soldiers for the first time and saw it with my mom before going to bed at 9 o'clock. I had a bunk bed and was just settling in about an hour after my mom went to bed. My bedroom door was open halfway, and I realized that I'd forgotten to lock the back door before I went to bed. My dog had been acting skittish that night, but other than that, he was acting normal. That's when I noticed I could see a shadow looming in my doorway. It wandered around for a while, and when I finally got a good look at it, it really resembled the Dog Soldier's werewolf, with large pointy ears that could bend and move like a German Shepherd's would have. It was about 7 or 8 feet tall and had hair over most of its body, as far as I could tell. It also had a tail, about 2 or 3 feet long. What I saw was too skinny and too tall to be a bear. At one point, it raised its hand to scratch behind its ear, and it eerily resembled a human hand, with long claws coming out instead of nails. I could hear its loud footsteps as it walked around and bumped its head on the dividing wall that hung halfway from the ceiling in the living room, which was about 6 feet off the ground. It was next to my mom's room at this point. Luckily, her door was locked for whatever reason. Probably because my birthday was coming up and she wanted to hide my gifts. It wandered into the living room and then the kitchen. It rustled through our stuff, dropped some pots and pans on the ground, and managed to find the dog treats. I didn't dare get up to get a closer look, because my bed made too much noise for that. This went on for about 5 or 6 hours, and I finally fell asleep about 2 or 3 in the morning. And when I woke up, it was gone, but the back door was standing wide open, and there were footprints in the sand leading into the woods. The brand new bag of dog food had been ripped open, and nearly all of it was gone. There was trash spread out on the floor, and all the dog treats were gone too. The remote was chewed in half, and there was this nasty smell of dog pee all over the house. Like someone took dog pee, filled it in a bucket, and left it out in the sun for days before pouring it into the inside of my living room. It took 5 days of steam cleaning to get the smell out. My mom thought our dog had somehow gotten off of the chain and come inside and tore everything up. But how could that be when it was still on the runner the next morning? And there aren't any dogs big enough to leave a 7-inch wide footprint anywhere near my neighborhood. Sure, there's the occasional Great Dane or Dalmatian, but I measured their footprints at 4 to 5 inches wide. From that day on, I have always locked the front and back doors. My mom still doesn't believe me, but that doesn't matter to me. You never know, because the next time it shows up, it could be your last time. This was an odd occurrence, especially because I live in Tallahassee, Florida, in a double-wide mobile home, and for the record, that was not the last time I heard or found evidence of those things living in or around my house. I have on occasion heard weirdly deep dog-like noises coming from the woods in my neighborhood. The woods aren't very wide or thick, but I still see the occasional bear or big cat footprints. About 3 or 4 months after I saw it at my house, I was out on our annual camping trip we do every year. I wandered away from camp to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. We weren't all that far from a highway in a small suburb. I heard what sounded like a fight between a large cat and an even larger dog. Shortly after that, I encountered a Florida panther for the first time. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the Florida panther is endangered and very rare. It was up in a tree with its tail in the air, and its head facing near the ground. Its fur was roughed up like it was just in a fight with hair gel. It kept growling and hissing and frantically looking around. It didn't even seem to care that I had seen it, or that I was right at the base of the tree. I pulled out my cell phone and called animal control, but when they arrived, the panther just jumped down and scurried back into the woods, with the animal control in pursuit. One of the officers stayed behind in case it came back, and noticed some strange giant dog prints alongside the road, and he asked me, "Did you see those dog prints over there? I wonder what breed it is. I don't recognize it." I told him about what I saw in my house when I encountered the dog man, and by the end of the story, he kind of chuckled and said, "Do you really believe in such superstitious tales?" I asked him what breed of dog he thought it could be then, because I didn't know of any dog species that have footprints that big and leave only 2 tracks behind, like they were walking on 2 legs. He promptly looked back at the tracks and noticed they were odd. They just weren't the right pattern. He scratched his head and said, "Well, that's weird. I didn't notice that before. But if it were true what you were telling me, that would mean that there's a werewolf nearby, and that can't be true either." He went on and on, saying how it couldn't be true. But as we were walking back to my campsite, I finally went to the bathroom. I went behind a tree while he was talking. We got about 10 feet away from where we were having a conversation when we heard some rustling in the bushes behind us. That's also where I had just gone to the bathroom. There was a loud, heavy sniffing sound, like a dog, and it was coming from the bushes where I did my business. The animal control officer lifted his flashlight and lit up the bush. At first, all we could see was a big, black, fuzzy thing bent over in the bushes. When it looked in our direction, its eyes reflected the light, and a bright red color made its ominous, shadowy outline look even more aggressive. When all of a sudden it sprang up on 2 legs and began to run away, jumping at least 10 feet with each stride. The animal control officer's jaw dropped so far that it stayed like that until he reached my campsite. The whole time, he swung his flashlight back and forth, looking and listening for the creature that we had just witnessed, making sure that it didn't come back through the woods. He was also looking for his partner, whom he wanted to tell the story of what they missed. Ever since then, we haven't had time to go camping, but I also don't think I want to anyways. I still hear strange things out in the woods all the time. Most of them sound like they're coming straight out of a hole. Good evening, creatures of the night. So there you have it. Dogman is everywhere. He's in the woods of Montana and the suburbs of Florida, and I think it's only a matter of time before we get a picture or video or some other type of solid evidence that proves once and for all that these guys are real. Then we can look the rest of the world in the face and say, "I told you so." I want to give a quick shout out and a huge thank you to my dad and my Uncle Jimmy for fixing my car for the millionth time. My uncle owns and operates a body shop right here in Sacramento called Wyan's Body Shop. So if you need some work done on your car or you want a paint job, give him a shout out. Wyan's Body Shop. Everybody there is really cool. Thank you to the 1,464 creatures of the night that have already subscribed. If you're not one of those creatures of the night and you want to join our ranks, go ahead and click that subscription button right there on the page. It's the red one on the right-hand side, right underneath the Bigfoot. Also by Bigfoot, we have our links to our groups, the Supernaturalist Facebook group, our Twitter, our Pinterest, and our Google Plus account. So go ahead and join those too. I want to give a quick shout out to my new buddy, the Swamp Dweller. He does the narrations of horror stories just like me here on YouTube. You can find him on the featured channels. Also on the featured channels, go ahead and check out Expanded Perspectives. They're one of the best out there, in my opinion. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends about us. If you have a story, email us, thesupernaturalistchannel@gmail.com. If your friends or your family have some scary stories, tell them to email me too. Up next is another Dogman story, but this one's a little different because it doesn't come from here in America. This comes all the way from the Netherlands. The Supernaturalist is once again going international. So tune in next week to hear a tale of Dogman from the Netherlands. I'm signing off for now. I'll catch you next week. And remember, don't miss your chance to scream.
With cheese dippers by the Laughing Cow, you can dunk, do your thing, or
What's up, creatures of the night? The Supernaturalist here. First things first, I wanted to thank everybody for your continuing support. Last time you heard from me, there was about 47 subscribers. Said I wanted to push to 50. We're now at 61, so I think that's really cool that so many people tune in to listen to me. I'm gonna set a goal now of 100, so hopefully I can beat that by the next time you hear from me. My group on Facebook also has a lot of new subscribers. We're about 80 strong now. Keep sending out
I'm gonna speak over him for a second. Okay, I think I fixed the link. It works for me. So if it still doesn't work, let me know. I'm
Also
sorry.
at the top of the page where you see the Supernaturalist channel banner, go down where there's the little links and you can see the Facebook and the Twitter pages that you can visit us at. I was going to do the Falk Monster next, do a paranormal report on him, but a couple of days ago I got an email from a woman that wants to remain anonymous, and her Dogman encounter was so scary and exciting that I pushed the Falk Monster back. I think this story is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to share it. I got an email from her friend as well. His name's Brad. He doesn't care about being anonymous, but he is going to honor his friend's request to not have her name or location mentioned. But Brad has a bunch of stories that he said he wants to share with me. The first one, he said he was living in a haunted house. I think it was in Albany, New York. So next up, we're going to hear from Brad. Tonight, we're going to hear from Anonymous. Like I said, I'm really excited to hear from them, and I hope you enjoy this story. So, here we go. I present to you Werewolf Woods. Dear Supernaturalist, I would like to begin by requesting that any details I give about my identity or location of the encounter be kept private. Just the thought of writing this down is frightening me, and I'm typing now against my better judgment. But a very close friend of mine is urging me to share my horror story in hopes it may be some sort of cathartic experience. Along with my ever-present fear of what happened to me, I am also a high-ranking member of my profession and do not wish for my colleagues to hear about this and call my sanity into question. I will not share my name, nor will I share the exact location this happened to me, or what my previously mentioned profession is. I will share that I am female, and this happened to me in the early fall of 2002, September 26th to be precise, in Wisconsin. A friend of mine and I had planned on taking a long weekend and retreating into the woods for a 5-day camping trip. 3 days before we were set to depart, my friend informed me that she was unable to make the first half of our trip due to a work conflict, though she would be joining me that Friday. Being the adventurous type and having already taken the time off, I thought it would be a fun excursion and a peaceful couple of days if I ventured out into the forest all by myself. Now, in case you're thinking to yourself that this is not quite a sensible idea, I have spent many a night in the forest from the time I was a young girl up until my last camping trip, which was about a month prior to these events. The 14-year anniversary of my dark darkest night is just around the corner, and I've yet to venture back into the woods. The morning of my camping adventure, I woke early, eager to get on the road, for I had a 3-hour drive ahead of me. I loaded up my camping gear into my car and was on the road by 7:30 a.m. Around 11 o'clock, I finally had made it through the twisting mountain roads, parked my car, and hiked my way into the woods to find a good spot. To make things easier for my friend to find our spot, I had tied blue ribbons to the trees along my way. A cute idea, I thought, as our mutually favorite color was blue. After about 20 minutes and 2 other potential spots I had decided against, I found what I thought would be the perfect spot. I set up camp, made myself lunch, and enjoyed a hike, followed by a relaxing afternoon and a peaceful night in front of my campfire. That night, I retired to my tent earlier than I normally would, but the drive and multiple hikes had worn me out. About 10 o'clock or so, I extinguished my campfire and crawled into my tent. Sometime that night, I woke to what appeared to be a large something or other traipsing about my campsite. I'm embarrassed to say I have no way of knowing what time it was, or how long that something or other was out there, since I refused to illuminate my indigo watch. It seemed like a long time that the animal, or whatever it was snooping around outside, but admittedly, it could have only been mere minutes. Once the sounds faded off into the distance, I listened for another several minutes, and finally sighed in relief that whatever it was had went back to where it came from. I fell asleep again. The next morning, I awoke feeling foolish that I had let my fear get the best of me, and exited my tent to look for tracks. Unfortunately, I believe the ground was just too hard to produce anything of the sort. I again enjoyed the peaceful serenity of the forest the entire day, and found myself imagining what it would be like to live out in the forest. Little did I know that my perfect image of the forest and all it had to offer would soon be shattered forever, without any hope of ever getting it back. A few hours after sundown, I sat by my fire, enjoying a few chapters of City of Bones by Michael Connelly. The first thing that struck me as odd was how quiet the forest was. The previous night, it was abuzz with many different animals and insects, but this night, it seemed the whole forest had been vacated. A rustling sound from behind me alerted me to the presence of something close, and I spun around, peering into the dark forest, but saw nothing. That's when the most pungent smell I have ever had the misfortune of introducing my nostrils to wafted past me. The only thing I can relate the smell to is stale urine combined with an old dog that has lived his entire life in its owner's backyard. Another noise to my right startled me, so bad I nearly jumped out of my skin. Having had enough of this, I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it into the forest where I'd heard the second noise. What I saw still terrifies me to this day. No more than 50 feet from me did the beam of my flashlight land on the chest of a massive creature I don't have words for, and it was standing on 2 legs. It was extremely muscular and extremely tall. I'm above average height for a woman, at 6 foot, and this monster was towering over me. If I had to approximate its height, I would put it over 7 feet tall. It was jet black and had a canine-like head, which included a very large muzzle, and its eyes were a yellow amber color, which it used its hands to shield when my flashlight beam hit its face. Its hands are the fuzziest in my memory, but if I recall correctly, they were almost a sickening combination of a paw and a hand. How I took in such details in the mere seconds I stared upon this creature is beyond me. Every muscle in my body was frozen, but every neuron in my brain was screaming to flee to my car. As I turned, I realized this beast wasn't alone. Before me was yet another of these creatures, only this one was on all 4s. It too had the yellow amber eyes and a canine head, and it too was jet black. It was stalking towards me as my back was turned, but froze when I turned around and cast my light onto it. Was this creature sneaking up on me while its partner was causing a fatal distraction? The creature that was on all 4s stared at me, opening its mouth. Its mouth seemed to be full of huge, pointed teeth that could easily tear me to shreds. I was frozen in terror, my mind still trying to relate to what I was looking at. For all intents and purposes, I was standing in the middle of 2 huge werewolves. But surely these monsters can exist, is what my brain was trying to say. However, there, right in front of me, 2 allegedly fake movie monsters stood. I was sure I was going to be killed and eaten by this pair. My body never being found again, or my friend possibly following my ribbon into our campsite and finding the remnants of my carcass. Remembering that you should never run from a predator, I slowly began to back away from them. To my horror, the monster on all 4 legs took a few steps towards me. I glanced over at his friend. It hadn't moved. I continued to back away, silently praying that there wasn't a third monster behind me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The monster didn't move from where he was, and I backed away more, and still the monster remained motionless. At this point, I had succumbed to the most frightening amount of terror I have ever endured in my entire life, and my flight instinct took over me completely. I ran. However, I ran in the only direction I could, away from my car. The creature that was on all four legs was blocking the path that I had used to get from my car to the campsite. I was cut off from the only means of escape I had. For several moments, it sounded to me as if they were both chasing after me. I could hear the heavy footfalls of the pair behind me. The footfalls themselves made these creatures sound incredibly heavy. Still having no idea what I was facing, I had no way of knowing how well these things could see in the dark. Were they nocturnal? How much of a disadvantage was I at? Was it going to be a quick death, or would I be eaten alive? I continued to run through the trees, tripping over the miscellaneous forest obstacles as I tore through the woods of terror. I was trying my best to stifle my screams of fear, but could not seem to get a grip on the tears that were now freely falling down my face. I haven't the slightest idea how far or how long I ran, but my lungs were on fire, and the only thing I was managing to do was isolate myself even further into the woods. As if I were the senseless victim of a bad horror movie, I stopped running and aimed my flashlight in the direction I had just come from. I remember the beam itself was bouncing around as I shook uncontrollably. I held my breath and listened. All I could hear were the peaceful sounds of the forest. This gave me some measure of calm, for the quietness I'd experienced before was a sure sign, in my opinion, that the giant predators were present. I remained still for the longest time and continued to listen, holding my hand over the light of my flashlight. I could feel the sting on my face and bare arms where the brush had scratched my skin. Now worried that the blood from my wounds would attract these things, I started to panic and gasp for breath. I decided to myself that I was at a crossroads and a decision had to be made. Should I keep running further into the woods and wait it out until morning? Or should I risk doubling back towards my car and possibly running right into these creatures again? I took a deep breath, prayed to God it wouldn't be my last, and gathered my courage for the run back towards my car. I silently patted myself on the back for always wearing my car key on a chain around my neck. I took one more moment to listen for anything heading towards me and sprinted back the way I came. As I ran through the forest, I was suddenly very aware of the damage my face and arms were taking from the trees and bushes, but pushed it out of my mind and continued to run. After what seemed like an eternity, I saw the light of my campfire and blew through my sight. I didn't take the opportunity to look around, but for the few brief seconds I was at my sight, no monsters were visible. The rest of my run was uneventful, yet still terrifying. As I ran, I couldn't help but think back to just the previous day, where the hike into this once wonderful area was so peaceful. That calm had been shattered forever. I finally and thankfully made it to my car and wasted no time locking the doors. I turned the ignition and turned on my lights, half expecting to see one or both of these monsters standing in front of me. Thankfully, nothing was there, and I drove as fast as the dark, winding mountain roads would allow me, again half expecting to see one of them standing in the middle of the road. I drove straight home. By the time I arrived, it was nearly 4:30. Even at this early hour, I called my friend and told her I had returned home and the camping trip was no longer happening. When she asked why, all I could say to her was I would fill her in on all the details at another time. For 3 years, she was the only person I shared my story with. I still don't understand what I witnessed that ill-fated night. Like I mentioned previously, I have not gone back into the woods since. I never even returned to collect my belongings. Until that night, I was a firm believer that the Sasquatch and monsters like that were make-believe. What I saw changed the way I look at the world. These creatures are definitely out there. The fact that the first creature I encountered seemed to be causing a distraction for the other to sneak up on me from behind gives whatever they are a measure of intelligence I wouldn't expect to find in a mere animal. Not to mention how terrified I am when I think that if I hadn't turned around, that creature could have pounced on me, and I wouldn't be here to tell you this story. What exactly were these creatures I encountered? With the possibility of being laughed at, I still believe it to have been a pair of werewolves. Whether these are monsters that are men in the daylight, or if they are simply these creatures all the time, does not affect my opinion. I do know one thing. The moon was not full that night. The other moment of my encounter that gives me chills and can possibly attest to their intelligence is the fact that this creature used his claw to shield his eyes from my flashlight. This reaction gave him an almost human quality, or at least a human intelligence. Moreover, why did they cease their chase? I doubt I outran them. Did they decide I wouldn't make a satisfying dinner? Did they ever intend to harm me at all? Were they simply chasing me off their territory? These questions I will have the rest of my life. Thank you for relaying my encounter to those that have a true interest in hearing what people like myself have to say. I'm positive you will do the story justice. In closing, I do know that there are people out there that are desperate to have an encounter of their own with these monsters. I beg you, stay out of the woods at night. Do not go looking for these monsters. For all you know, they could kill you. Sincerely, Anonymous. If you or someone you know has a paranormal encounter that you're too afraid to talk about, whether it be from fear of reliving the experience or judgment from those that don't believe you, know you are not alone and there are people out there that can help you. For more information, feel free to email me at thesupernaturalistchannel@gmail.com. Danielle Stedman of Dogman Diaries and Vit Cundiff of Dogman Encounters Radio offer their support, a listening ear, and no judgment. Alright, my creatures of the night, that'll about do it for this episode. Remember to share, comment, and like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. If you're interested, please look us up on Facebook. The link is right above you. Next time you hear from us, it'll be with Brad's story, who's friends with the Anonymous that you've just heard from tonight, as he talks about his ghost encounter in Albany, New York. Once again, I'd like to thank you guys for your support. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you in the comment section, and hopefully you can even send me a story or two at thesupernaturalistchannel@gmail.com. That's all for tonight, folks. And remember,
I love it.
don't miss your chance to scream.
Very nice. Almost too nice. They're better people than me. I just like sharing my art. Also having a good laugh with people, you know. Oh shoot, I gotta find a different video to watch. Give me a second. Will you please? I'm trying to find one that I haven't heard. And maybe you guys haven't heard either. We'll do this one.
Things really do go bump in the night. Monsters, demons, everything you've ever feared was under your bed. They're all real.
Well, makes you feel better.
Welcome to the Supernaturalist Channel.
Oof and a half, really.
Don't miss your chance to scream.
No, I haven't heard about Let's Read. What's that one about?
I live in this town in Wisconsin that's pretty famous for finding dogman encounters. I'm not going to tell you exactly where, because I don't want people coming and searching for these things. I believe they're pretty dangerous, and I don't want anybody getting hurt. I haven't had an encounter myself, but sometimes at night I hear these howls, or maybe even more like screams. They don't sound like they belong on this earth, but they sound like it could be a mixture of a man and an animal. But not really either. It's hard to explain. It's like a scream, but also like it's trying to communicate with something. I do have a family friend that encountered the dogman. I don't know all of the story, but I will try to get it for you. I know some of it, and I'll tell you it. I'm also going to look around my town, seeing if I can find out other people's encounters. That way I can give them to you, and you can put it right here on your channel. As for my family friend's story, she was driving to work one day, and she saw somebody walking on the opposite side of the fence near her. Well,
Okay.
she thought it was
I'll check
somebody
them out.
at first, until she got
Right
closer
now, because
and
I'm
realized that not
unprofessional.
only was this thing really...
What? I literally listened to everything he's read so far, so... Okay, so it's called Let's Read. Okay. Ghost Story 7 Creepy Babysitting Horror Stories. I like listening to, like, one of those, like, wolf stories. Ghost stories are pretty cool, too, but I like listening to more of those kinds. 11 True Scary Pizza Delivery Stories. Jeez. Okay. Okay. Let's do the Pizza Hut stories. That sounds actually kind of funny.
My team and I always had trouble managing our tasks until one of my
lovely.
colleagues found Monday.com.
Monday.com. Alright. Let's read.
I lived in a city in central Ohio that has a big college that I live near.
Yes.
I actually attended a different college than the one I mentioned, and made the 20-minute drive.
Gonna be honest, love to hear his voice. Don't know why, it's just very soothing.
From the city to that college. I also worked nights as a pizza delivery man in the city and the surrounding suburbs. One night, I had an order in the town where my college is located, which is a smaller suburban city northwest of my home city. Now, this call occurred during what my coworkers and I refer to as the dead hour, which is just before the shop closed at 1 in the morning. I begrudgingly took the pizza, got in the car, and plugged the address into the GPS. I noticed that the house was located off of a back road in what looked like a sparsely populated area.
Stories
Not
questionable?
thinking much of this, I drove up Route 315 to
Some of them are really
I-270
worried
East
that
and
they're
exited.
not real.
After passing through
Which,
downtown,
honestly,
the cemetery, and the
some
college,
aren't. People
I
just want
drove through
attention
some
sometimes.
subdevelopments,
But
and then on the smaller
you
road
know.
where the house was located. The GPS notified me that I had arrived at my destination, but to my surprise, the house was boarded up. I noticed that there was a small shed in the back of the house that had a small window.
Oof.
There was a flickering light in the window. At this point, almost every red flag had gone off in my head,
sorry if
but I knew
buffering
my
happens.
hard-ass
Our
boss would be
Wi-Fi
pissed
isn't
if
that
I
great,
wimped out on this delivery.
unfortunately.
So I proceeded towards the shed. As I got closer to the shed, I heard a rustling in the bushes next to the driveway.
Oh, that's so
Then I heard a man whisper, "Here they come, Billy. 45, 45. At that point, a man jumped out of the bushes and two other men jumped out of the shed. They were carrying knives and were wearing these long robes and white masks. I made it back to the car just in time, but one of the assailants managed to slip my arm. As I escaped, I could see the assailant standing in the middle of the road looking pissed. I probably drove 90 miles per
Thank
hour
you.
on the way back.
I don't
When I got
know
to the
why
shop,
I shade the way I
everyone
do. I
looked
feel like
shocked.
I'm really weird.
After explaining everything to them, we contacted the police and they dispatched a few officers to the house. When they got there, the assailants were gone. They found some strange drug paraphernalia in the shed, and some ropes and various other strange equipment. What they were to be used for, I have no idea. This happened when I was about 14.
Wrong
I
color.
had just started babysitting for this family in my neighborhood. They had two kids, a boy who was 10 at the time, and a girl who at the time was 8. They were great kids to babysit. They got along with each other without fighting, and always did what I asked of them without complaining. Before I launch into what happened, I'm going to give you all some background information about this family's house, so you can understand why I was so freaked out. The house is situated pretty far back in my neighborhood on this little side street off of the main road that runs through the neighborhood. The house is in a cul-de-sac, so there's not a lot of traffic on this road at all. Usually, the only people that ever come into the cul-de-sac are the mailman and people who lived in the other 3 houses that were in the cul-de-sac. The street itself was not very long at all, so there were only 3 houses on each side of the street that weren't in the cul-de-sac. Essentially, despite being in a large neighborhood, the street that this house was situated on was very quiet, and if you didn't live in the neighborhood, you might not know that this street existed. It was a fall Friday night. I'm pretty sure it was late November, right after Thanksgiving, and I had arrived at the house around 6 p.m. The kids were already sitting down eating dinner when I got there, and the parents told me that they expected to be home around midnight or so. The parents also made a joke about how the kids had the whole street to themselves, since the other families that lived there were out of town for Thanksgiving. The parents left, the kids finished eating, and we went outside to play in the cul-de-sac. I remember locking the front door and taking the house key outside with me. The kids rode around on their scooters for about an hour. For some reason, I just felt really on edge while the kids were playing outside. I chalked this feeling up to knowing that we were alone on the streets since everyone else was out of town. After the kids finished playing outside, we went inside to play Wii in the basement. I remember locking the front door once we were back inside and putting the key on the kitchen counter. I then checked the front door before I went downstairs to the basement. I was super vigilant about checking the doors because I had watched so many scary movies where the babysitter forgets to lock the door, and then some crazy murderer gets into the house. Blah, blah, blah. As the kids are playing in the basement, I get that unsettling feeling again. I didn't feel like we were being watched. It was more like when you know that something is going to pop out in a scary movie, and you're just anticipating it on the edge of your seat, with tension at its highest. The feeling sticks with me the entire time that we're in the basement, but again, I chalk it up to the knowing that the entire street is empty. The clock strikes 10 and it's time for the kids to head to bed. We go to the top floor of the house where the kids' bedrooms are. The house is set up so that when you open the front door of the house and come inside, you're standing in the foyer with the steps to go to the top floor directly in front of you. If you're standing in the foyer, you can see all the way up the stairs into the bathroom and on the top floor. So the kids are in the bathroom brushing their teeth, and we all hear a car pull into their driveway. I figured that it's their parents coming home super early, and I expect to hear the garage door start opening, but that sound never comes. I walk into the girl's bedroom and look out her front window. There's a car running in the driveway, and there's a man in the car, but the headlights are turned off despite it being 10 p.m., and it's pitch black dark outside. I figured it was someone who just got lost in our neighborhood and was just using the driveway to stop and get their bearings before heading back out on the road. I leave the girl's bedroom and head back to the bathroom where the kids are. Suddenly, I hear a knock on the front door. I turn around and there's a man standing at their door holding a pizza box. There are 2 long windows on either side of their front door, so I have a clear view of this guy, and I know that he has a clear view of us. I immediately get that eerie feeling that I had been feeling all night.
I have forgotten about
I asked both of the kids if they ordered a pizza for some reason, and they both said no. These kids were always very honest and wouldn't lie about something like that, or even order a pizza without asking me, so I knew they were being truthful. Normally I would have gone downstairs to see what this guy wanted. Maybe he had the wrong house and I could point him in the right direction, but that little voice in my head was screaming, "Don't go downstairs. Do not open that door." The guy also looked like he didn't work for any pizza company. Normally they would be wearing a uniform or a hat with the company's logo on it, or something. This guy just seemed off. He looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, and looked super disheveled. His shirt was really wrinkled. His pants were filthy and ripped, and he had this ratty black baseball cap that was pulled down super far so that his eyes were covered. He was also grinning really aggressively, like I thought this guy's teeth would just shatter because of how hard he was pressing them together. At this point, the kids notice him and start asking why he's here. Should we open the door, etc., etc.? I tell them no, and ask that they just go to their rooms and lie down. The boy goes to his room, and I walk the girl into her room and look out the window at the car again. I notice that the car doesn't have one of those pizza delivery car signs on the top, which all of the pizza companies in my town require delivery drivers to have. So now I feel really confident in my initial intuition that this guy isn't a legit pizza delivery guy. The girl gets in bed, and I come back out of her room and sit down at the top of the stairs so that I can keep an eye on this guy. I tried to stay really calm so as not to upset the kids, even though I was flipping out on the inside. He's still standing at the door holding the pizza box in one hand, and he's still grinning that teeth-shattering grin. His mouth was almost too big for his face, I thought. Even though I can't see his eyes because of the hat, I know that he's dead-ass staring at me. Then, without breaking eye contact, he starts jiggling the door handle pretty aggressively while still grinning. I silently thank God that I was so psychotic about making sure the front door was locked. He stops jiggling the handle and resumes staring at me. If I was in this situation now, I probably would have called the police immediately. But being only 14 and fairly new to babysitting,
it's not as bad as it was,
fear.
But
I felt like if I took my eyes off of him for a second, when I looked back, he would be standing at the base of the stairs. After about another 5 minutes of the stare down, he literally starts walking backwards off of the porch without breaking eye contact. Legit, this dude is walking backwards towards his car while still staring at me. I go into the parents' bedroom, which also has a view of the driveway, kneel down in front of the window, and peek out. I'm expecting to see this guy getting into his car. Nope. The guy is nowhere in sight, but the car is still there. So I return to my perch at the top of the stairs, half expecting to see him at the door again, or worse, standing at the bottom of the stairs. But he was nowhere to be seen. After about 20 minutes, I hear a car starting. I run back to the parents' room, kneel in front of the window again, and notice that the car in the driveway has started, and the guy is sitting in the driver's seat, still fucking grinning. He also doesn't turn the headlights on. He shifts into reverse and begins slowly backing out of the driveway, grinning the entire time. Right before he drives off, he turns his head, and I swear to God, makes direct eye contact with me again. And again, I can't see his eyes because of the hat, but I know that he was looking directly at me. This is really disturbing to me since he didn't really know where I was in the house. The parents' bedroom is in the farthest window to the right if you're looking at the house from outside. The lights in the parents' bedroom are off, and I'm kneeling down. So really, the only part of me that might potentially be visible is the top of my head, my eyes, and my nose. But it's also pitch black outside. He doesn't have his headlights on, and it's pitch black in the parents' bedroom, so I doubt that I was really visible. He also didn't spend time scanning the windows. His head literally just snapped to where I was. It was like he could sense that I was looking at him. After I had time to calm down and collect myself, I started replaying what had just happened and came to the following conclusions. This guy was not a pizza delivery guy. He had no uniform, looked and acted like he was possessed or something, and his car was unmarked. Those 20 minutes or so that elapsed between when he walked backwards off the porch to when he got into the car were probably spent walking around the house and checking all of the doors, trying to gain entry. He had malicious intent. Maybe he wanted to rob the house. Maybe he wanted to do something more sinister to me or the kids. Either way, this guy was bad news, and I'm glad I trusted the voice in my head. I think he probably found some pizza box and tried to pose as a pizza delivery guy to get me to open the door for him so that he could strike. There are still some parts of the story that are confusing me. If he really wanted to get inside the house, why didn't he find a rock, a brick, or something else to throw through the window? I mean, I'm very glad that he didn't, but I just thought it was a bit odd that he checked the doorknobs and then gave up after he discovered that they were all locked. Maybe he felt like doing something that made a lot of noise that would alert me, and so he could try to sneak in a more subtle way to catch me off guard. Why did he walk backwards up the porch? Was it just to preserve eye contact and thus intimidate me? Or was this dude just insane? Why did I feel so unsettled early on in the evening, before this guy even showed up? Was he watching the house and waiting for the kids to go to bed, and for me to be off guard before trying to get into the house? How did he know where to look when he was backing out of the driveway? Why was he grinning the entire time? Did he know that our house was the only house on the street that was inhabited at that time? Why did he pick that house, especially given the fact that it's on a very quiet and secluded street, and you have to drive pretty far to the back of the neighborhood to even reach the street? He could have picked the 50 or other so houses that you have to pass to even get to that house. The town where I live is upper middle class and has a super low crime rate, and drugs aren't really an issue. We're also surrounded by other similar upper middle class areas, so I'm doubtful that this person was on drugs or some crazy vagrant. Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe this dude was just jacked up on drugs. Maybe he was just a vagrant dude. Maybe he really was just a lost pizza delivery man with some unsettling personal quirks. But I'm really doubtful. So I'm a pizza delivery girl. Easy enough. I was at work around 9:30 p.m. when this guy calls. Very whispery, breathing voice. I do my usual, "Thank you for calling Pizza Hut. This is Karen. How are you doing tonight?" After the usual exchange, I find out he is ordering for delivery. He is a new customer, so I had to put in all of his information. Nothing weird. He tells me he has a coupon for a
The
pizza
audio
and asks if I can give him the
from
discount.
Let's Read.
I told him,
Inked
"Let me
Leaf,
grab my manager and we'll take care of
is
that
the
for
one
you."
who suggested it.
He asked for me specifically to take care of him. After I came back from dealing with my boss, I told him that we discounted him for his coupon. He thanked me. Here's where it gets weird. He stopped me mid-sentence and told me that I have a very nice sounding tone of voice, and that he loved hearing me talk, and you should be a disc jockey. I was a little weirded out, but I tried to stay professional. I told him that it was very sweet and I would consider it. He said, "I'd listen to your radio station. Thank you for taking my order tonight. I'll stop by your store and see you sometime soon, Karen." I wish I would say it was over, but that isn't true. Note that this man lives in an apartment complex. What I didn't realize is I had taken the complex's address, but not his apartment number. Not 5 minutes later, the man calls back, and my coworker Belay answers the phone. I had learned after the fact that he had asked for me by name. I picked up the phone and did my greeting, and he reminded me I forgot to ask for his apartment number. Nothing weird yet. Again, I thanked him and changed the information. Before I could hang up, this was our conversation. Karen. "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" "Are you doing all right?" "Yes, sir. I'm great." "Good. I'm going to hang up now. See you soon." Belay heard the whole story and told my boss to have my male coworker take it. This is what Bob came back with. First thing he said to me is asking where you were. Okay, so I got there, right? And I knock on the door. He asked in this weird, seductive voice, "Come in." But I was not about to go in this guy's house, so I knock again. He opened the door with a big smile on his face, but saw it was me, and it just dropped. I greeted him, and he said, "Oh, where's Karen?" I told him you were here at the store, and he just looked upset. After I took his money and gave him his food, he asked how you were. I told him you were doing all right, and he just said, "Good. Karen is a sweet girl. Tell her I'll see her soon." The fact that he had asked the driver to come in, and that he was expecting me, creeps me out. Maybe he's just lonely and wants someone to talk to. But
Well, I'm
still,
glad you guys are enjoying
add
this.
one more creep to my list. For my first job, I worked as a delivery driver and dishwasher at a mom and pop's pizza shop. The shop is within walking distance of my apartment, which I just got alone. The shop is owned by a foreign man and his 2 nephews, and another friend of theirs. I was the only female in the entire building. At first, the owner asked me to change into my work shirt the first day, in the walk-in freezer. I declined and put it on in the bathroom. He supervised me delivering pizzas and put his arm around my chair and told me to join him and the workers after work for drinks. I politely declined. I wasn't even old enough to drink. He asked if I had a boyfriend, which I did at the time, and I told him yes. He just lived in another state. He then offered his worker to sleep on my couch because he didn't have a place to stay, without consulting me. I obviously protested and declined. He also told me that he knew my boyfriend's name, which he did, which I never told him. As time went on, things got weirder. The owner would take me out back, where there were no cameras, and scold me for not pouring bleach into the dishes I was washing. I told him that you can't stick your hands in the bleach, but he didn't care. He would take me out back after my shift and compliment my eyeglasses and tell me how beautiful I was. I would say thanks, back away, and drive home every time. He came up behind me as I was washing dishes and blew in the back of my neck, and then proceeded to tell me that, since I live alone, didn't inform him of this, that I should be careful. He then stated that he knew the exact layout of the apartment because his friend lives there. I told him I had a male roommate. I didn't, and he chuckles and told me I did not, and that he was going to break into my apartment. I was stunned and had 4 deliveries waiting for me to drop them off. On the way out the door, his nephew muttered something about me being a girl. I threw the pizza bags into the car and promptly pulled over, had a panic attack and dropped all 5 pizzas and whatever else I was delivering at the first house, and didn't give a shit. I went home to my apartment, called my mom, and sat in the kitchen with a hammer for safety. Someone was knocking on my front door, but I didn't look to see who. I already had a feeling. Then, the pizza shop called me repeatedly. I left my eyeglasses in the shop and had their pizza bags. My dad went into the store, took the pizza bags back, and threatened the owner, saying he has no problem going back to jail. My dad brought back my glasses. Months later, I ran into the nephew at my college campus, and he proceeded to make unending, uncomfortable eye contact until we passed each other. After the incidents, I got a huge 100-pound American bulldog that kept me safe until the day she died. The pizza shop is still open for business, and I'm still living in my apartment. Needless to say, I don't order pizza from that shop anymore. I attend a college that is located in one of the poorest cities in Northern California. The campus is relatively safe since the school employs its own Department of Public Safety.
Everybody.
But after the sun sets, it's usually a good call to remain indoors because that's when the townies come out, and they tend to wander into campus. About 2 years ago, I was living in an apartment complex in the main part of campus, and I still didn't have a car yet. It was the end of the fall semester, and I was the last person in my apartment of 3 girls to finish taking finals, so I was home alone since my roommates had already gone home for winter break. I got back from taking my last exam and followed my usual routine of dejectedly collapsing into bed to cry and sleep off the effects of pulling an all-nighter. When I finally woke up, it was already past 10 p.m. and I was starving. Unfortunately, the student grocery store and cafeteria were closed for the day, and I had nothing in the apartment to eat and no car to get food elsewhere. I was woefully poking around the fridge in the hopes that I would find something substantial to tide me over until morning, when I noticed a Domino's coupon that someone had stuck to the freezer. My stomach's pathetic cries for sustenance had been answered. I quickly decided that there was no shame in ordering a whole pizza, plus Cinesticks for myself because 1, I was ravenous, and 2, the completion of finals demanded some sort of celebration, and 3, if anyone happened to ask, I was going to lie and say I was sharing it with a friend or something along those lines. Anyway, I eagerly ordered up my feast for 1 and provided the cashier with my address, apartment, and cell number. I typically never give out my number to anyone, but I had ordered delivery from Domino's in the past, and I knew that they needed my number to call me once more when they were outside because the drivers always got lost navigating through campus. About 20 minutes later, I got the call. My food was here. For reference, it's now close to midnight and the campus was pretty much dead since most students had gone home. The driver told me that he had parked in front of a dorm building that was right across the street from my apartment. I hustled out of my apartment and was going down the stairs when I spotted the delivery guy waiting outside of his car with my pizza. At this point, my sense of caution kicked in and I slowed my pace as my brain took in the fact that there were no other students out. The lighting was bad, and I was essentially walking up to a stranger in his
I like
car
that you guys
that
like my
still had his
art.
engine running. As I neared the bottom of the steps,
I think
silently
it's
hoped that he
okay.
would
It's
cross
not
the
as good as
street
some
and
others,
approach me,
but
so
you
that I
know.
wouldn't have to get near the car. Of course, that didn't happen.
Excuse me.
I made my way across the street and was finally able to get
I
a
hate
good
that my
look at
voice
him.
is getting lighter.
He was a
the more I
relatively
talk to
short
you guys.
Hispanic
I
guy,
don't know
maybe
what's
5'7"
happening.
to 5'9", in his early 20s, and my nerves were getting bombarded by the creeper vibes he was giving off. I can only compare it to the vibe that you get when you're out
I think
clubbing,
I'll just finish
and you
it in the
suddenly
live
spot
stream.
the
I
guy
might as well.
lurking in the crowd sporting this slick
Since you
back
guys are
ponytail,
all
sunglasses,
here.
oversized shirt, and sagged pants combo who just so happens to be headed in your direction.
Sorry, I'm
I
reading
did
the
my best
comments
to
off
appear
of my
calm and
phone.
keep the mood light and friendly. He made
That's
some
how I
comments
see all
about
your
how
comments.
late it was
My
and
phone's
how
right
no
off
one
to the
was around,
side of
but I
me.
just signed the receipt as quickly as possible,
What do
gave
you
him my thanks
What do you
and an
mean?
awkward
Excuse
smile,
me.
and hightailed
It's
it out
not-
of there as
it's
soon
not
as he
great.
handed me my food.
It's decent.
I could feel
for
him watching me as I
someone
climbed
like
the stairs
me.
back to my place. Once I got back into my apartment, I locked and chained up the door and sat down on the living room couch to calm myself. After a few moments, I shrugged off the situation and reasoned that it was just my paranoia and overactive imagination acting up again. I had just turned on the television and was about to take my first bite of pizza when I got a text from an unknown number. It read, "You're hella sexy." I connected the dots and matched the text number to the call I had received earlier from the pizza delivery guy. My initial reaction, of course, was shock, since nothing like this has ever happened to me before, but that eventually melted away into laughter and disbelief when I considered my appearance at the time. Like I had mentioned earlier, I had just woken up from my nap after taking my last final. I was wearing a pair of raggedy sweatpants and loose sweatshirt, and my hair was nappy and tied into a messy ponytail. My face was probably
I
greasier
guess.
than the pizza I was eating, and to top it off, I had my glasses
I just
on.
feel like I should be
Definitely
humble
not a pretty
about
picture,
it because
much less anything that could even come close to resembling hella sexy.
I
The
hate
next
boasting
morning, I
about
got a
my
call
art,
from my
and then
boyfriend
people
John,
think you're
and I casually
egotistical.
told him about the pizza delivery
And I don't
driver,
want to seem that
who
way,
casually
which
signed
says
his
I'm
name
not
in the
that way.
text as Phildo, and the events that had transpired the previous evening. After sheepishly trying to defend my actions on the basis of poor judgment caused by extreme hunger, and promising never to do that type of thing again, John convinced me that I should report it to the campus police as a precautionary measure. I gave them a call, and an officer stopped by my apartment a few hours later. I relayed my story, he took some pictures of the text message, and he wrote down Phildo's phone number. The officer then told me that he would contact the Domino's if I wanted him to, but that it would most likely result in Phildo's termination. I was still relatively unfazed by the whole situation, and I told the officer I just wanted to make sure that this creep never did this to any other girls on campus, but at the same time, I didn't want him to lose his job. The officer then started asking me questions about how I felt after my encounter. Questions along the lines of, do you feel threatened by Phildo? Do you feel safe in your apartment with the knowledge that Phildo has both your phone number and your exact address? If I wasn't scared before, I definitely was now, and during the course of my questioning, I had broken out in a cold sweat, and my traitorous imagination began conjuring up all sorts of dastardly situations that ended in my untimely demise. Obviously, I ended up giving the officer the go-ahead to pursue my case and contact the Domino's. About a month later, while I was at home celebrating the holidays, I got a call from my boyfriend. I had left him the keys to my apartment so that he could store his bike there and crash in my room while I was away. He told me that he had stopped by my place, but that he couldn't get in because the keys weren't working. He also said that it looked like someone had broken in because there was some glass on the floor and a wooden board across my living room window. I was pretty upset because this was my first time hearing about it, so I called the school the next day to figure out what the hell had happened. Housing transferred my call to the public safety department, and the officer I spoke with was only able to tell me that, according to their records, a maintenance worker had called them 2 days after I had headed home to report my broken window. Public safety had responded by boarding up the window and changing the lock when they noticed it had been tampered with. I convinced the officer to let my boyfriend into the apartment so he could go check and see if anything was stolen, and thankfully, nothing was. My gut tells me that it was Phildo who did it. It was Filda who tried to pick my lock and then broke my window. It scares me even more now when I consider the fact that nothing had been stolen. My flat-screen TV was right by the window that had been broken, and my boyfriend's fancy road bike was sitting right there in the living room. Why didn't he steal anything? Does that mean his intentions were to break in and get his revenge on me, the girl that had cost him his job? Would this still have happened if I had not given the officer permission to pursue the case? I try not to spend too much time speculating about what Fildo's true intentions were, but when I do, it still makes my heart race when I think about what could have happened if I'd still been in my apartment at the time. This was about 6 months ago in the summer, Southern Hemisphere here. I tend to order a fair bit of pizza since hunger is a thing, and pizza is pretty much my only option for delivery since I don't drive. Now, I'm the kind of girl who doesn't wear pants if I don't have to. Oh, the weather's about 25 degrees, no pants for me. I have one pair of shorts that I love to wear, but only around the house. So obviously I put those on as I'm expecting a pizza delivery and can't exactly open the door pantless. I open the door, accept the pizza, and begin eating my dinner by the television. Not too long into my meal, I get a message on my phone. I've deleted the messages, of course, but in the first message, the sender calls me by name, which is strange as I prefer my nickname, and asks if I'm home alone often, with a winky face. Okay, way creepy. Who is this person? Between me asking who on earth they are and how they got my number, probably a mistake on my part, they begin to describe exactly what I was wearing, and I get a horrible, sinking feeling. This person has my number, my name, and how I'm dressed. I realize that the only way they could know this is if they were the guy who delivered my pizza, as I had to use my name and number to order. And if that's the case, this person knows where I live, too. I put the number into Google and check the first few results. They're a local, and I've actually seen this person around on one of the buy, swap, sell pages on Facebook. Realizing they were in my town was the worst part, and they were literally in a good position to stalk, harass, or continue to be creepy as hell. I ended up drawing all the blinds, crawling into bed, and pretty much making myself into a blanket burrito, staying as still as I could for a few hours. I was genuinely scared out of my wits. Thankfully, I've yet to hear from this person again, after threatening police action. So I work at a pizza place, usually inside, as my insurance does not cover claims for business, but occasionally I will cover a delivery shift for one of the drivers because the money is good. Our delivery area includes a few new development, upper-middle-class, cookie-cutter neighborhoods, an older 1940s-era village, 2 apartment complexes, some trailer parks, and a bunch of rural areas. Not rural to the point of seeing hundreds of stars at night, but enough that you couldn't hear your neighbors yell. So about a week ago I was covering a delivery shift. I come back to the shop feeling pretty good. I'm averaging $5 a delivery and they have all been pretty close, and check to see if I have any more deliveries. I have one to an address I have never seen before. We have mostly semi-regulars get deliveries, so an address that doesn't seem the least bit familiar is odd. It's out on one of the more rural roads. I asked the kid who took the order what was up because there were special instructions on the ticket. He says, "They said go around back because the front door, I guess, isn't operational." I'm like, okay, that's not that uncommon. People often want you to go around back. Either they're painting the door, the house shifted and it's a bitch to open, or they're just hanging out back. So as I'm driving out to the house, I get an odd feeling, and I don't really like the idea of going to the back of some house in the sticks. It would all be too easy for some thugs to order a pizza to an abandoned house. There are quite a few in the more rural areas, then jump the delivery guy. I figured I'll scope the place out when I get there, and if it seems sketchy, just call them and make up some bull about how it's against company policy to go around back of houses to prevent robberies. As I'm driving to the house, I realize it's towards the end of this road that gets less populated the further down you go. Great. I'm pretty near the address and driving slow. I see this house abandoned looking and set up from the roads with no address and a bunch of trees. I think, that house better not be it. So I drive past and check the next house's address, and lo and
I love the
behold,
blanket burrito.
that abandoned looking one was the right house. Shit. At this point, I'm not super worried though, because out in the boonies, the standards of upkeep on your house are pretty low. So a house in disrepair isn't unusual. So I double back to this house and pull into the driveway. At this point, I'm getting bad vibes. It just doesn't feel right. So I park my car at the very end of the driveway with the rear of the car on the shoulder so anyone passing can clearly see it. At this point, I call back to the shop and tell them I'm at this sketchy house, and if I don't call back in 4 or 5 minutes, call me, and if I don't answer, call the cops. While I am on the phone, I take a chance to take a good look at the house. It looks extremely abandoned, and not just in disrepair. The driveway is crumbling, bits are gravel, and there are weeds growing out of it. There is no mailbox, no trash cans, no car, no lawnmowers, no landscaping, no kids' toys, absolutely nothing in the yard. The yard hasn't been mowed in what looks like years. The house is total crap. The roof is all but falling apart. The siding is falling apart. The back deck, which comes around the side, is falling apart. And the only part of the house that looks even a little bit decent is the allegedly non-functioning front door. The windows are all shut. It's 95 degrees and humid, and this place does not have AC. They all have the blinds or curtains shut, the few that aren't actually boarded up. I don't even see any wires running to this house. It's not dark, but it's dusk, and there isn't a sign of any lights on in the house. At this point, I'm starting to get pretty nervous. I am a 5'10" male, 180 pounds. Not in any great shape, but I did take karate for 10 years, so I'm not helpless.
Well, he took
but I do try to avoid any sort of confrontation as I can, as I'm mostly a pacifist. I'm not too concerned about getting robbed. No skin off my teeth, it's not my money. I mean, I would rather not get robbed, but I'm mostly worried about getting jumped
I don't listen to
or
stories
killed.
of clowns.
It's a fairly safe area, but recently there have been
And
some
that's
more
why I
rather
don't do haunted
unsavory
houses
people
with clowns.
moving in from the
I'm
city.
terribly,
A big spike
deathly
in home
terrified.
invasions and robberies,
Good English.
but more worrying of
That's how
stabbings and assaults.
scared I am of them.
So it's time to either nut up or shut up. So I'm not about to go charging in there like a fool. So I get out my phone and call the number they gave when ordering. While I'm doing that, I'm also getting the pizza out and make sure to leave my door open. A running car half in the road at an abandoned house with the door open looks suspicious, right? I figured if shit does go down, it might look out of place enough to make someone stop. Not that there really is any traffic this far down the road. I'm starting to walk up to the house while the phone rings. It rings twice, and then an automated message comes on. It says something along the lines that this number is associated with an internet texting app. The free ones you download and let you send free texts from a different phone number over a data connection. I think it was haywire. We have had issues with people using numbers from those services for pranks in the past. It's a huge red flag. My heart is now pounding in my throat, and my whole body is telling me to bail. I don't want to get a reputation of being a flaky bitch as a driver and lose any future delivery shifts, and that is why I have not bailed yet. So I'm just standing there holding a pizza looking at this house, but not wanting to venture around to the back of it. I'm hoping that the resident will look out the window and come out by the road to get their food. I'm looking at the front windows, checking for some signs of life. I see a blind go up on the one window next to the front door, and a really creepy looking guy with a hat pulled low and big sunglasses on is looking out. Remember, he is in a completely dark house surrounded by trees at dusk. There is no reason for him to be wearing sunglasses. I also see what appears to be a big guy standing right behind him in the room. This could have been anything though. When he sees me looking, he mouths something and he darts away, presumably towards the allegedly broken front door. At this point, I got the fuck out of there. I had stayed pretty close to my car, so it was only a few steps away, so I jumped into the driver's seat and threw the pizza into my passenger seat, something I would never really do since I'm really anal about keeping my car clean. I slam into reverse before I get the clutch all the way in, so I grind my gears a little, again something I never do. Without looking, I simultaneously slam and lock my door and floor it backwards onto the main road, slipping my clutch horribly, but at this point, I don't care. I don't want to fuck around and risk a stall. I didn't even check for cross traffic. Really stupid on my part. I start to drive away and look back at the house. The screen door on the outside of the front door is now open, but the front is still shut. The guy isn't out in the yard yelling, "Wait, come back," or anything. He's just gone. So I pull over a little ways up the road to call back to shop and tell them I'm all good, and I'll elaborate when I get back. The people never called back to inquire about their food. People usually call if their pizza is 15 minutes late, and these people never got it, so it's really strange they didn't call. Pretty much confirming they were up to no good. After telling my coworkers about it, we conclude it was definitely a robbery at the very least. So we put the address and phone number on our no deliveries list and ate their pizza. Now, I doubt I would have actually gotten murdered or anything. Robbed with maybe a gun pulled or a little roughing up, yes, but it was still very unnerving that I easily could have gotten into some serious trouble by just doing my job. Especially if the idiots picked a slightly less abandoned house to set up at. So a few weeks ago, I got a new job as a pizza delivery guy. Pretty cool, $8 an hour.
What do you mean, how am I
So
so
I'm told
quick?
to go deliver a pizza to some
I don't
apartment
think I'm
complex.
that quick.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
I think I'm pretty slow.
Upon knocking on the door, a pretty cute girl opens up and smiles.
Am I
Suddenly,
quick?
this delivery is turning out pretty sweet. I tell her the price, and she says, yeah, I got the money in my room, and asks me to come in to wait. Now, in any other circumstance, I'd say no, because that's the safe and smart thing to do. But hell, this girl was cute. Plus, what could she do that would hurt me? Well, she returns from her room with the money, smiling at me, and then she drops the change and slowly bends down to pick it up. She's flaunting her rack in a tank top, and when she comes back up, she's smiling. She gives me the cash, and this is how the conversation went after. You're cute. Thanks, you too, I say. Can I have your number? Barely know you. Why don't you hang for a bit and we could talk? Alright, but only for like 10 minutes. Well, she led me back to her room, and we were going to share the pizza, but as soon as we get back there, she has all this BDSM stuff. Handcuffs, choker chains, dirty panties, whips, etc. lying around. I kind of froze as soon as I took it all in, and then I said something like, "Oh, never mind, gotta go," and got the fuck out of there. I guess the lesson I learned is that even if someone looks like they're harmless and not creepy, there's still the small chance that they are. Never trust a stranger, no matter how good they may appear. Back around when I was 10, it was not uncommon for me and my siblings to dick around outside. On this particular day, I was tired out from the day before and decided to stay inside.
If my friends
I would occasionally
heard this
go
story,
look outside to make
like
sure
a
everyone
BDSM
was
one
okay
before
and
this
doing
one,
well.
they'd be like,
I was a paranoid
"Why
small
leave?
child
Just
due to
stay."
some form
And
of
I'd be like,
trauma I'd experienced as a
that's kinda
smaller
weird,
child.
man.
Well,
Especially
after
since
about
you
my
don't even
third
know this
glance
lady.
outside, my cousin and brother were standing at the end of the
She
gravel
might want
drive
to kill you
talking to some
afterwards,
pizza
you know?
man. I turned to my mother and asked if we had ordered pizza.
We're listening
Maybe as a
to
surprise.
scary
My
pizza
mom turned
stories.
to the door
I
and
didn't know this
bolted
was going to be a
outside yelling.
thing.
The sounds
Look,
of
if your
tires screeching
children...
could be heard.
I'm sorry.
My mom came back inside with my brother, cousin, and sister. After asking what had happened, my brother and cousin went on to explain that the pizza boy they explained to be around his late 20s had asked the boys if they wanted some free pizza. Of course, being small kids, they were readily willing to accept such an offer. He told them the pizzas were in the back,
yeah, bro.
and if they wanted them, they would have to get in. That is luckily when my mom ran towards the car, yelling random obscenities. And thankfully, whoever he was sped off.
He speeds off as soon as he sees the mom. It's like, oh shoot, I've done messed up.
2 weeks ago, I was home alone, and the
No, you're not
doorbell
supposed to see
rang.
that! Or that
I
one!
asked who it was, and the guy said,
Don't worry about it.
it's
You
pizza
didn't
delivery.
see that.
I didn't order a pizza, and when I looked at the people, he was indeed carrying a pizza box. I told him I didn't order any pizza, and he left.
Oh.
I looked out my window, and I see him cross the street to my neighbor's house.
No, that's not my
Didn't
secret.
think anything of it
What are you
since I thought
talking
maybe
about?
they were
I
the
don't
ones
think
who ordered
about
the
that
pizza.
stuff.
So I went back to doing what I was doing, which was
If I
playing
ever
video
date
games.
someone and they go,
Turns out,
hey, want to
The
try
guy who robbed
BDSM,
my
I'll be like,
neighbors because they weren't home.
we're done.
Pretty scary stuff. I probably could have stopped it if I called the police.
I'm
And
a
to
big
think of
wuss,
it, he
and I
was
don't like
carrying
pain,
a little Caesar's
so
box,
I'm Gucci.
which is pickup
I'm Gucci,
only.
you know. I hate that I said that now.
As a third-year university student, I like to think that pizza, gyros, and hamburgers are important staples of my cost-effective and not really nutritious nutritional needs. Needless to say,
nutritional
it
needs.
wasn't long before I became besties with the guys running the local pizza parlor 3 blocks from my house. The guys were super cool. I met them for the first time when my best friend Sharon, or Cher,
You weren't
and I
supposed
went
to
in to
see
buy a pizza
those.
for
Those
our
are
movie
other
night.
requests that I
I
had to
wasn't too
do.
jazzed on the movie
I still
night
have
because
to do.
my, let's be honest,
I just thought
roommate
I'd get
Sam
this one over
insisted
with
on
because
joining
it was
in.
going to take me the most
No, I'm
time
not
with 2
homophobic.
characters.
Cher's the biggest lesbian out there.
This
She
one's
thinks I have
just
a very
one.
nice butt. I was
Okay,
Sam-phobic,
whoa.
though.
I'm
She
hearing some
decided pretty
stuff from
early
this
on that I
guy.
was
I'm
hiding my
like,
true
what the
lesbian nature, and had been trying to get me to accept myself for what she believed me to be for like 3 months. This meant that movie nights with Sam mostly consisted of the one where Cuba Gooding Jr.
You're
goes
not
on a
going to
gay
blackmail
cruise,
me.
the one
Not
with the chick
today.
working in a flower shop, and the one where Nikki from Orange is the New Black is a high school cheerleader rooting for her own team.
Okay.
So I wasn't too stoked on the movie night. These mostly ended up in deep conversations about the importance of revealing your true sexuality.
Oh,
And
God.
neither was shared because Sam had a way of making things really fucking awkward. Sam would later go on to tell Cher's girlfriend of 5 years that Cher was cheating on her in an attempt to break them up so that she could later help Cher pick up the pieces. Cher's kind of a total babe. I told these pizza dudes about my roommate and her crazy movie night antics, and they tried to help us out by inviting Cher and I to come back at midnight to watch a horror movie on their projector that they had set up in the
why would
dining
you
area.
ever agree with
I'm
that?
pretty big on horror movies, so to me it sounded like an awesome idea.
We don't know who you
Cher
are as
thought the
pizza men,
opposite,
but hey,
and that it sounded like
we'll
a
hang
plot
out with
to
you
kidnap
anyway.
and murder us.
Like, what the heck?
We were going. Over the next couple of months, I became really tight with the guys, and I would come over every Friday night for scary
okay,
movie
so
night
then he
and
stays
discounted
over there.
pizza. The dudes were cool, and a good way to get time away from Sam, who had taken to tracking my movements like Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Dog
The
the
guys were
bounty
pretty
hunter,
successful with their
Jesus.
pizza business, and pretty soon they had to hire on more drivers, which is when I met Bill. Bill
Bill.
was pretty much your stereotypical old guy who failed at life. He was in his 40s, but he
Well,
looked like he was pushing
That's a
60.
roast if I've ever heard
He
one.
was constantly high,
Get
and
roasted,
never
Bill.
showed up to work on time, but always had a really measly and long-winded excuse full of anecdotes of why his life as a pizza delivery guy was so hard. Customers hated him
Right.
too. When they opened their front door, he would push his way into the house and put their pizza on the kitchen counter table, something he thought would get him a bigger tip. He wouldn't leave their front door until they gave him what he felt like was a big enough tip. If they didn't have money, then he'd tell them that they could tip him in pot. If they didn't have that, then he'd start to yell at them for being cheap assholes. One night I was studying and had to order instead of going out. Normally the guys only sent the cool delivery guys to my place, but that night the rotation hit Bill. He stood in my doorway chatting me up for a long time, and told me the guys called him Big Bill for a reason. So obviously Bill needed to get fired like yesterday. The guys do what they have to do and give him notice. I come into the shop on Bill's last working night and talk to my buddy Pete about the firing.
That's
Apparently
great.
Bill
I
was
love
taking it
that
really well
storm.
and was just about to
Oh,
finish
that's
his
funny
last
as
delivery
heck.
of the night. I hung around to talk to Pete about his
Jesus
troubles
Christ.
with his crazy girlfriend, actually a pretty nice
So
lady.
funny.
Bill comes in while we're talking and tries to join in the conversation. I was standing at the counter with Pete behind and Bill at my side. Bill starts offering me rides home. I declined because, hey,
excuse
dude gives
me,
me the
Bill?
skeevies.
You're kind of creepy
He
now.
kept insisting that it was on his way, but I just kept telling him that it was only a 15-minute walk and that I'd be fine. He started to get pouty, and then said that I didn't want to get into his car with him because I thought he was creepy. He hit the nail on the head, but since this is Canada and we're polite to a fault, I just laughed it off and insisted that I'd just really rather not. Bill kept pouting,
I think it was
and then went outside to have a smoke in his car. On the way out, he grabbed my ass. This sort of abuse isn't uncommon for my bum, but it still pisses me off to no end when it happens. As soon as Bill was out the door and halfway to his car, I told Pete about the ass grab.
That's
He
great.
was a total dude about it and told me that it was a good ass and that he probably would have done the same if he had the balls.
Oh my.
I was pissed as a wet cat and it was getting late, so I started to trudge back
I'm
home.
a woman. You can touch
At
my
the
butt no
crosslight,
matter
a gray
what you
piece
want.
of junk that I recognized as
That's
Bill's
like
car
stupid,
drove up to
and I
me.
hate people who do
Bill
that.
rolled down his
honestly.
window and asked if I was sure that I didn't
rude.
want to ride. Even after his charming ass grabbing, I was still pretty keen on not getting in the car with him.
I wouldn't either,
Who would have
lady.
thought, eh?
I wouldn't
So once
either.
again I said, "No thanks, dude." And he pulled a right, presumably to loop back into the back parking lot of the pizza shop.
Oh,
He shot me a smile and
I'm
a
from the
creepy
United
little wave.
States. Well,
I
obviously.
hated that dude. I kept on walking until I reached the next
I'm
crosswalk.
from Ohio.
When I was halfway across, a gray
I'm from
little
Ohio.
shit beater drove up behind me and blasted
Yep.
on the horn. The car drove on past me,
Oh,
so I
excuse me.
figured it was just Bill being an aggressive dick like usual. I walked down the main street, keeping my eye out for him until I reached the gate leading from the street to the backyard of my house. I'm usually pretty nervous entering the backyard because it's as dark as the bottom of the ocean in that bitch, so I grabbed my keys between my fingers for a
I should've
makeshift
put
pair of brass
PG-16
knuckles,
on here.
just in case. All was good in the backyard, but when I turned the corner to reach the front of the house,
Because we've
I
been
saw a gray,
talking about
shitty
BDSM
shit
and
beater
other
parked
stuff.
on the
and
curb.
Yep,
One thought went through my
exactly
head.
what I want to talk about.
Fuck. So I'm not super rational, and even though I was standing right at the entrance to
do?
my landlord's basement suite, I instead bolted
it's
an
cool that
extra
they live
20
there.
feet to my front door. I felt
Holy
like I was going
Jesus.
a million miles per hour, and that he was going at like 0.3 Michael Myers paces per minute. Michael Myers is one slowly but surely motherfucker. I reached the door and fumbled my keys when I heard his car door shut. I dropped my keys on the fucking ground. I whipped down to pick them up, and I heard him whistle.
Sorry, I'm
I
laughing
jammed
at
the
the
keys
story.
into my
This
door,
is getting pretty
turned
funny.
and slammed that shit behind me as fast as I could, and turned the lock. Suddenly, everything got really quiet. I didn't turn on any of the lights. I just went to the front window and watched. I couldn't make Bill out, but I could see that he was in his car from the lit end of his cigarette. I called for Sam, but he wasn't home, so instead I called Pete on the phone. Our conversations basically went like this. Pardon my excessive
Currently doing the
use of the
background
French
for
language.
it, and then after that,
Generic
I
Italian
might
mob
end
boss
it.
Pizza Pete here. What can I... Fuck, shit, Pete. What the fuck? Fucking Bill followed me home, man. Fuck. Whoa, what? Fucking creepy ass-grabbing fucking Bill is outside my fucking house.
Oh my
He
god,
was supposed to be on the other side of
jeez.
town. I asked him to do a delivery at
Okay,
10 Mile
okay,
like 20 minutes
okay.
ago.
Whoa.
He's fucking here. He's probably just pulling this shit because he thinks you're pretty and it's his last shift. Are you sure it's him? It's not like my town has a shortage of gray beater cars, but I think I had seen this one enough times in one night to make a positive ID. Yeah, dude, it's like definitely him. Okay, I can be over there in like 15 minutes. Okay, see you soon. I hung up on Pete and moved away from the big front
Perfect.
window so that I could hide in my room, where I could look through a smaller window that he was less likely to see me in. All of our doors lock and are really heavy duty, so I felt pretty secure in my own room.
Okay, now that you all
I didn't
know
turn on my bedroom
what
lights,
you're
but I
getting yourselves
crumpled once I
into.
locked the door.
What is
I
this?
sat there for a little bit trying to calm down my breathing.
Oh, okay. Never
I
mind.
heard my landlord watching a movie downstairs in his living
Never
room,
mind.
but I didn't get up until I heard the doorbell. The only way to reach the door to the downstairs suite was to walk down the stairs leading to the front door, and then take the next set of stairs
Okay,
down.
now that we've
I was fucking
covered
determined
that
to get
it's
my landlord,
PG-16.
a way bigger guy than Pete, but I had to get past a windowed front
We
door
can move
first,
on.
where Bill would be able to see me if I was at the door. At this moment, I was pretty scared, and being scared makes me angry, so I essentially
Being
said fuck it
scared
to
makes
myself
me
and
angry.
went down the stairs to the
Oof.
front door. I could see his head, and the left half of his body through the window pane. He saw me trying to sneak past and called out, "Hey baby, it's me, Bill, from the pizza shop.
Hey, baby,
Pete sent me over with
me.
a free pizza for you." I immediately declined that offer right down the stairs to my landlord's door. I knocked and he groggily opened it up for me.
Now you all
I told
might
him the
find me a
situation,
little
which basically
cheap
went like,
and lazy,
"Dude, creepy fucking pizza guy followed me
but
home,
that's okay.
and now he
I'm
won't
gonna do
leave."
it anyways.
My landlord is pretty much the
You'll
coolest
see what I'm
dude
talking
ever, so
about in
he
a second.
snaps awake and heads up to the front door. He uses his adult voice and tells Bill that he did not order pizza, and that if he doesn't leave, he's going to call the fucking cops. Bill doesn't say anything, but we see him walk back to his car. He actually did have a pizza box, but probably one meant for another order. My landlord was tired, so it gave me a "come get me immediately when crazy shit like this happens," and then went to bed. I watched Bill in his car from the big window, keeping my screen on and lit as bright as I could so that he could see that I had my phone ready to dial. He started up his shitbox and rolled
I'm
down
trying to
the
find
road.
the perfect one, so
I
give me a
called Pete at the
second.
pizza place to tell him that my
This one
landlord
here.
handled it and that he didn't have to come over anymore. Pete waited for Bill to come back and then basically threatened the life of his Big Bill namesake if he ever came back to the pizza place or near me again.
I'm cheap,
It's been
okay?
almost 2
Shush.
years since then,
You don't
and I've
see
never
this
heard from
at all.
or
I'm not
about
doing
Bill
nothing
since.
wrong. There's nothing wrong with a little cheating. I'm just not in the mood to make
Pardon
it
my
myself.
excessive use of the French language.
Hello, the wonderful Cece.
This happened to me just last night, and I'm still a little shaken up by it. Where I live, it's winter, meaning it's still dark outside when I leave for work in the morning, and gets dark again while I'm on my way home. Last night, I'm on my way back from work, and considering it's my friend's birthday, decide I'll get off the train and a few stations early and swing past a local shopping center to pick up a gift and some groceries for dinner.
Well, that
This
went
suburb is
well.
generally known for being a little bit sketchy after dark when the cooked units come out to play, but is close enough to the city to have very accessible public transport. I've never seen anything too
I'm not
awful.
done yet.
Mainly just your garden variety street harassment,
Calm
a
down.
few brazenly public narcotic dealings, and a
No, I
couple
didn't
of
mean to put
arrests
that in
now
there.
and then.
Close that. Okay.
I spend a while trying on clothes and grabbing my shopping and a bottle of wine for later. By the
Just get rid
time
of
I
the
head
background for a
outside,
hot
it's probably dark, and I
whilst
make
I
my way
do
to the
something
closest bus
special.
stop. As I'm walking there, I realize it's not as populated or well lit as I anticipated, and it's in front of a number of closed cafes and shops, unlike my usual stop near the probably police-patrolled train station. The bus drives past as I'm walking there, and I figure I'll check the timetable and walk back to the other stop, just to be safe. For context, I'm a 5'6", 135-pound woman, and I generally tend to avoid being out alone at night, especially since there have been a number of public crimes against women in my city that receive widespread media attention. It's only about 10 minutes to the next bus.
I know you're
When
not
a dark
doing
car
anything
pulls
serious.
up at the bus stop,
Just messing
I
with
assume
you.
it's someone there to pick up a friend or a family member, considering this is, after all, a bus stop, and you're not legally allowed to park there.
Boop.
I realize the passenger side window is rolled down. Odd, considering that it's freezing outside. Out of nowhere, the older man in the driver's seat yells out, "This is the ride you ordered, get in."
Ooh.
I assume he's talking to someone perhaps behind me as I'm waiting at a bus stop, not for an Uber. I look up from my phone and there's no one around me. At this point, I'm startled because when has a legitimate Uber driver yelled out to a random woman on the street to get in his car, or had someone else in the car with them? I responded with no, mainly out of surprise. "Get in the car," he demands. Okay, now I'm freaked out.
Get in the
There's
car,
no
lady.
way I'm willingly getting into
Nah,
that vehicle.
fam, we're
I
good.
remain at the bus stop for a few seconds, tossing up my options. This is until both men exit the car, which is still running, and begin walking in my direction.
Okay.
Nope. I drop my cigarettes and start walking frantically towards the shopping center, praying the lights will change before they get there. I don't care if they have non-ulterior motives. My potential safety matters more than I offending them. I duck behind another bus shelter, looking back as I do. The younger man is still on the other side of the road, waiting for the traffic to part, the driver out of sight. Pretending to hail an oncoming bus, I duck into the shopping center.
Oh, I
I
see
take
where
a
it
few
is.
seconds
Never
to
mind.
compose myself, don my scarf and hat, obscuring my distinctive red hair, and remove my jacket,
Nice.
switching it for one I just
Okay,
purchased.
perfect. Now I can.
While still inside, I order an actual Uber, glancing constantly between my phone and the entrance. The minutes until the driver arrives pass excruciatingly slow, until I make my way back outside and maneuver myself between a group of people waiting out front. A million thoughts are passing through my mind. I always liked to think I could handle myself well in potentially stressful situations and not let my emotions get the better of me. But now I'm regretting not checking the dark car's license plate or getting a better look at the men in the vehicle, just in case. I practically fly into the Uber, barreling my bags in before me, scanning the cars around me. What if I'm being followed? Am I just being paranoid? Either way, my head is turned backwards the entire way home, watching for any dark cars with two men in the front. By the time I arrive at the end of my street, I'm confident there's no one tailing us, but still nervous and shaking nonetheless. Again, I run from the car to the front door, fumbling with keys, hands shaking all the while before slamming the door behind me and bursting into tears. I'm met by my startled partner, whose face turns from excited to see me to incredibly concerned. Despite being home, with doors locked behind me, I continue to panic. The adrenaline is overwhelming, and my brain seems to think now is a good time to remind me of an article I read in the local paper recently about two offenders who escaped from prison, who I recall were known to frequent the suburb and those surrounding the one in which I'd just fled from in a paranoid frenzy. I feel sick to my stomach. Tears stream down my face. I manage to recount the events of the past 15 or so minutes, frantically searching the internet for any information regarding the convicted creeps, all the while considering calling the police. I only managed to calm down after I failed to find any recent news stories. The men were both apprehended a month earlier. I don't know who these men were, nor their intentions, but I can only assume it was something sinister. I continued to tell myself it was just a coincidence and find a logical explanation for what happened, as I have to wake up the next morning for work and walk the 20-minute route to the train station alone. So this happened when I was 8 or 9 years old. My parents had just given me the house keys so I could get back from school on my own. This was a normal day. I was getting back from school with my friend who lived in my neighborhood. We passed by a lady who looked pretty normal, so we just ignored her. While we were talking, someone stepped in between us. It was the lady. And it wasn't even an a-hole move when you want to pass by two people walking together so you go in between them and walk away. She was walking along with us, as if though she was part of the conversation from the beginning. We started to walk faster, but she just kept up with us. Finally, I was across the street from my home. I said goodbye to my friend who went to his house, and the lady just walked away in a different direction. I opened the gate, stepped into our front yard, and closed the gate. When I opened the door to go inside my house, my dad was just going out to see what was going on, because he saw everything through the window. I told my parents what happened, and when we looked out the window, that lady was trying to open our gate. My dad rushed out to get her out of here. He asked her why she was going with me and my friend, and why she was trying to get into our yard. She said, "My little child Barbara went into your yard and accidentally locked herself in here. I'm here to get her back." My name is Alex, not Barbara. This lady thought I was her kid or something, so she decided to attempt to break into my house. My dad explained to her that her child is not here, and I'm just his daughter going back from school. He got her to get away from our house, and she was still standing on the other side of the road. I looked out the window. She looked directly at me. Dad called his friend, who apparently was this lady's landlord. His friend said that she was always messed up, and apparently there was a case when she was running down the street with a knife. His friend called the police to come. When the police came, my parents went out to explain what happened. They wanted me to stay in the house because they didn't want me to be too close to that lady, so I was watching everything through the windows. The last time I saw her, she was getting put into an ambulance. This started towards the end of my 8th grade year. Basically, my friend had this guy who was following her on Instagram, and he would comment on all of her posts telling her how pretty she is. Now, that wasn't super weird, but we found it kind of creepy because this dude was obviously in his late 50s, and she was 13. And then he also started messaging her every day.
Alrighty then.
Nothing overtly creepy, just mainly small talk at first. Eventually he finds my page and starts commenting, but I don't post pictures of myself online much, and basically all of it was just doodles and pictures of my dog. Now, this guy's account also mainly consisted of art, and most of it was actually pretty good, so I didn't mind him commenting on my art at first. Eventually, though, he also started to message me and try talking to me. Now, I have pretty bad anxiety, and I hate coming across as mean, so I wouldn't really respond with words unless he asked me a direct question. Mainly what I did was send just a heart or a smiley face. Stupid, I know. So this continues for a few weeks, and I learned that this guy can randomly blow up. I learned this because I had responded to a message from him asking my age. I told him I was 13, and then put my phone down because I had to help do dishes. When I came back to my phone, I had like 10 messages from him asking why I wasn't responding, and also telling me he was just joking. I was super confused at first as to what he could have sent that would have made me mad, and basically he had responded about how both me and my friends looked like we were 18.
But I don't make
sense. I found that to be kind of creepy, but I didn't want to confront him about it, so I told him it was fine and that I was just doing my chores. And the conversation moved on, and I made an excuse to stop messaging him for the day.
Picture is over
One really creepy thing he did was when I posted a picture of my grandma's dog, which is a
Uber drivers. I didn't even start that. Okay. Now that the picture is done, I'm going to end this stream and then make myself some food. After that, I will probably start another one to finish this one. So yes, there will be another stream today, and I will post it on Discord, as I usually do. So yeah, I gotta end it here because I'm hungry, and yeah. I'm also really tired. I shouldn't be, but, you know, being sick, it kind of sucks. Yeah. I did not mean you, Anna. Okay. Well, enjoy. Sorry, I was reading your comments. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. And I don't know if I'll do spooky stories next, again, or just music, and then I'll talk to you. Do you guys want spooky stories again? Because I don't know. I feel like we enjoyed those a lot more. So that'll probably be what we'll listen to. Okay. Inkleaf says yes. Alrighty then. That will be the... They're hilarious. I'll try and find a really funny one. But, like, they're gonna be spooky stories, but they'll be funny. Worth our while. Also, I will be posting this picture on Discord if, you know. Yeah. I'll be posting it on Discord. In Honeybee's Discord, Hunbun Bee's Nest. That's where I started all of this. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next live stream, which will be today, later on. Bye!